Every one of you watching this screen, look out. Because soon, very soon, the most horrifying monster menace ever conceived will be oozing into this theater. Two teenagers see it first, like a falling star from outer space.
Boy, that was close. Hey, come on. I want to see if I can find it.
An old man finds it, touches it, and this is the shocking result. From then on, there's no stopping the blob as it spreads from town to town. It's indestructible. It's indescribable. Nothing can stop it.
This town is in danger.
How can it be stopped? Mob hysteria sweeps one city. Before long, the nation, and then the world could fall before the blood-curdling threat of the blob.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. We are so grateful that you're joining us today. You know, we're going to dive deep into the chemistry of a very important topic. Fallon Dyle, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. You know, we were having a podcast conversation at the National HVACR Education Conference on a new issue that we have in the HVAC and refrigeration community that is really starting to struggle for a lot of contractors and technicians to understand how to properly treat that. And it's quite intriguing. And you, by trade, are tell me about your background in the chemistry side of things.
So pretty much I started as a forensic chemist. So that's where I did a lot of drug chemistry, toxicology. Then I kind of turned into more of an analytical chemist where I was doing a lot more of the machinery, working on mass specs, things like that, but also still doing the extractions. Then when COVID hit, our lab didn't switch, but we added molecular. So then I started doing DNA extractions and things like that. So I would say I'm pretty well versed in lab work as far as chemistry and bio.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the bio, it's more of the work aspect and not necessarily all of the background knowledge of it.
Sure.
But now I'm doing family, business kind of thing and doing R&D. So I've been in this position with Highside now for about 3 years. I've actually worked here for a long time.
Okay.
As a kid and all that. So
All
I
right.
know the business pretty well.
Yeah. So you're in the business of finding solutions, right?
Yes, I say I'm a problem solver. You bring me a problem and I'll give you a solution.
All right. And so the problem we're talking about is one that has gotten a reputation for being known as one thing, but actually probably is not. So we hear a lot about the growth that we have in AC condensate lines, particularly in the South. And a lot of people are treating them as they are zuglia, but that's not exactly what they are. And so that's what we're here to do. We're here to dive into the science behind what is this stuff that we are finding in these drain lines.
Yeah, so there is a bit of a misconception of the zuglia. So zuglia is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it is basically described as a mass of bacteria to a certain degree, but it actually does have its own, I guess you would say, categorization. It has a family, the phylum, all that kind of species and stuff like that. So technically it is different than this particular stuff. Now, there are people in other areas that are probably dealing with zuglia,
Right.
but it's going to be more of a thinner, cloudy, white mass, and it's going to be very kind of broken up. Whereas when you look at these, obviously right here, these photos, these are the biofilms. These are actual photos taken from South Florida.
Right. They're like little creatures growing inside these condensate lines.
Pretty much. I mean, they're definitely living, and then they're coexisting together. So that's the biggest issue that we have with these is none of them are fighting for any type of living at all. They're all just, in there chilling together and having a great time. And so that's where you see these really thick masses. They're almost, when we got it in, we almost couldn't pull it apart. Ooh. With even just our strength. That's how just entwined they are. and they create this film, and it's super, super thick. So when you see something that looks like this, these are the biofilms. Now, like I said, there is a Zuglia, but this is specifically not what we're working with in these tropical, high humid areas and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we're finding that they're very, very difficult for people to combat. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation. And they've just really been introduced into the industry in the last few years. So it's a very new topic. And so you dove very deep into the molecular side of it. We're actually going to get into a DNA extraction here in a little while and talk about how you got to the root of what these substances are. And so let's kind of talk a little bit about what you have actually found in this. And everyone that's joining us, we want to make sure that we know how large this community is growing. So in the chat, let us know where you're joining in from. We'd love to find out where you are joining this show from.
So basically what we did is I got a technician in Florida, and he basically sent me this stuff because I feel that you can only fear things that you don't know.
Right.
So first step is figuring out what this stuff is. So we basically got the sample in and then went to my old college, and we actually ran this. So we took the actual slime and we extracted the DNA from it to find out exactly what it was. So once we were able to find out what it was, then we were able to get to know it and then understand it. And then that way we can basically combat it. So what was found out, which of course I'm not actually going to share the actual names. So we're just going to kind of go through these here, but we found out that they were biofilms.
Right.
And that these biofilms are actually a big reason why we're here. Why plants, trees, and everything like that, they're actually a root and soil bacterium. And what they do is they create a coating on the root system when, say, an area has super drought conditions, or say it doesn't rain for months on end. This will actually protect the root system of plants, so then that when the conditions get better, they will begin to grow again, so it doesn't kill them. So these are actually something that are good.
Yeah.
They're just not good for our AC systems.
Right. And they have their own survival tactics then.
Yes, yes. And as you can tell, if you look at these, you got some that just have a couple characteristics, and then you have some that have a lot.
Yes.
So a big thing to notice there is if you see any type of resistance, that means that killed it at some point, and then it came back and it evolved to be able to combat that, basically. So if it was challenged, it found a way to fight. So you can see a lot of these are antibiotic resistant, which means that like enzymes, a lot of like detergents, cleaners and stuff aren't going to work. A lot of them are UV resistant, which means, the sun's rays and stuff aren't going to affect it. So UV lights typically aren't going to do very well for a lot of these. There's about 4 of them. And then we see pH and high temperatures. So that means your acid and basic cool cleaners aren't really going to work on this stuff. But the biggest one that I really wanted everybody to kind of know about is the one in the bottom center that's red, obviously. And basically, this one, as you can see, has a very long list. And if you look at the biggest part of it, the genome plasticity, that allows it to evolve very quickly.
Okay.
So, and that's why we can see it's antibiotic resistance, disinfectant, UV, and all this. So that means the moment that it comes in contact with something that's trying to hurt it, it can evolve so quickly to make sure that it doesn't get hurt. But the biggest thing about this one is it is linked to nosocomial infections in hospitals.
Wow.
So that pretty much means that if you went to the hospital and you were sick for some other reason, let's say a heart attack or something like that, and they had to keep you in the hospital and you ended up getting sick, it was because of this. And it can lead to, kind of like pneumonia, stuff like that. But I don't want anyone to be alarmed. This is something that would more affect people with a low immunity, a tampered immune system, any kind of underlying conditions, heavy smokers, typically people who are higher in age that may have some other issues going on. This would affect them more. So think if you get sick often, which probably means that you don't have a super strong immune system, this is something that would be kind of an issue for you. Now, it wouldn't necessarily, I don't want to say get all the way to the end where it could kill you,
right?
But it could definitely make you sick, and it could cause more problems than good. So my big thing with everybody is if you come into contact with this stuff, it's not going to hurt you if you touch it, but let's try and stay away from our mouth, our nose, and our eyes. Any way that it could get inside, respiratory is going to be your biggest, so your mouth and your nose. So if you're going to deal with this stuff, try not to get it too close to your face. Try not to breathe it in. Definitely don't touch it. If you do, just make sure to wash your hands before you touch your face. If you use gloves, that's great, but just remember that your gloves become a part of your hands. So if it's on your gloves and you touch your face, it's now on your face. So, just some things to think about when it comes to this stuff. But also, another big thing is the respect that I think we do need to give it. It is a very important part of our ecosystem as far as the plant is concerned and for us. So, we don't really want to kill it. It's something that, it's a problem that we have, but we want to just get it back where it's supposed to be. So if we create a non-conducive growing environment for this stuff, it's in the system, it accidentally got in there. That's not where it wants to be. So let's get it out and let's get it back into the environment where it's supposed to be. Because also, if we don't create challenge, then it doesn't have any reason to evolve and get stronger. So that's kind of another concept to think about as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. So we're really trying to control and not necessarily kill.
Yeah, definitely. Because these are very important. And from my end, I care a lot about the environment, but, science and stuff too is important. But we also have to think about if you created a product, because for instance, where I live, our codes are our drain lines go right out into your yard. It just kind of drips out. I know other people's are different. But let's say you created something that did kill these, and then that drips out into the environment, that's not a good thing. So we definitely want to make sure that we're giving it the respect that it needs, but then also making sure that we can help everybody along the way, because it is causing a lot of issues with technicians not knowing what it is. They're not able to reassure their customers. They're trying different things, and they're getting calls back within 2 weeks. So it's something that we definitely need to help everybody with. Water damage isn't good because that creates mold, which can, get circulated into the house, make people sick. So we definitely we got to create this balance. We got to find a balance between both of us for sure.
Which would make sense because we get a lot of technicians stating that they will treat it with a variety of different chemicals, and it continues to come back. And that's why we wanted to have this discussion and deep dive into what this stuff really is, how it develops, how it grows, how it gains immunity to different chemicals, and what we can do for a solution. Believe me, we're going to have some solutions as we get forward. We're going to talk about all the different products on the market, what works, what doesn't, and the whys and the hows, so we can actually explain this to our students and our technicians from a chemistry perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about how these grow. Let's hop over to the video real quick because it'll kind of come into play with this. So we're going to borrow a piece of a video from ChemAqua. ChemAqua is an industrial chemical manufacturer that deals with this in large scale. Like when we talk about scenarios like cooling towers, we talk about commercial fountains, but we can also talk about this in industrial waste water treatment and in water supply systems, which is kind of where it comes into play for us. So let's talk about how this evolves from a moisture perspective. Okay, so as we are starting to introduce these bacteria into an atmosphere, particularly think about like with water, right? And at first it starts building its own protective layer, basically like slime, right? That's why it's got the slime function to it. So it's actually starting to form a barrier to protect itself, and it's still inside, right? And traveling through like water stream. So if we think about like a condensate line off from an air conditioning system, whether it's residential, commercial, or it's an industrial, on a condensate line, we now have the potential for, like, say, these bacteria to be able to start collecting on the wall of a pipe. And isn't that kind of the scenario that we're seeing in the condensate line, Fallon?
Yes, sir. So basically the concept of it is, and we'll kind of go deeper into the very beginning lines too, because I know we've kind of discussed that too.
Yeah.
But you have to think of it from a perspective, okay, so we know that this is a root or a soil bacteria, right?
Right.
So if you're walking outside in your yard, these are going to get on the bottom of your shoes.
Okay.
So you walk inside your house, and then your air handler, your central air handler is going to suck up all the stuff that's in your house,
Yep.
and it's going to go over those coils. And you got to think, if your AC is running, then that means it's condensating. Water's really sticky. Think
Yes.
about how easy it is for dust to just stick to water, anything like that. So then it's sticking to that, and then it's going down into that drain line or that drain pan, and it's just growing very, very rapidly because it's got everything it needs. It's a warm environment, it's an untouched environment, and it's got water. And water is the most important thing on this planet. It gives life. So, that's a really big thing to think about is, people coming in and bringing that. But then we have to take that same concept and bring it to the very, very beginning of these being made. You got a manufacturing facility that let's just say 500 people work there. That means you have 1,000 feet walking in and out of that building every day, and they're going to have their own air conditioning system more than likely that's running through there.
Sure.
So this could actually potentially be starting all the way from the beginning of the manufacturing, because we're getting scenarios. For example, the technician that I work with in Florida, we have all these test houses with
Yes.
every aspect, like how many people live there, what animals, what manufacturer it was, where it came from, like all of this. And I have to say, getting to know this stuff, it does move rapidly, it does grow quickly, but at the same time, I still, in my scientific opinion, feel that a house of 3 or 4 people with a dog still would not be clogging within a week or two with a brand new system. And so if you think about it, the concept, these don't need anything to live. They're UV resistant, they're antibiotic resistant, so they'll lie dormant. Now they can't grow, they're not going to expand, but they're still there. It's one single microbe, right? So then it's sitting in that system and it's lying dormant. And then it gets put into, a new house, and then that system turns on, and now all of a sudden it's got water and it's got everything to start growing, because it's warm. So then you got an incubator basically,
Yeah.
and then you have water. So, starting it from the very beginning, that's what we're working on now too, which we'll get into more of kind of what we're working on moving forward with this. But, that's a big thing to think about too.
Yeah,
Is how this
absolutely.
stuff is rapidly growing so quickly.
And once it starts growing, once it's in the environment where it can start getting more nutrients, now it starts forming much larger masses. It starts introducing additional new bacteria into the colony, and the entire colony is being protected. So the chemicals that we tend to see technicians treating with are things like bleach, which they believe is going to kill it. But because of what it actually is, really not doing that at all, because we've already became resistant, especially even to some of our detergents and some of our UV treatment. So let's step back real quick. I'm going to hop out of this one. Let's go back into the science behind it and the whys and hows, right? So we've talked about how it develops and regrows. Let's talk about the science behind understanding and finding out what it is. Tell us what you did to get to this point.
Yeah, so basically this is more on the molecular biology scale than the chemistry here. And this is just kind of like a very simple idea, because I don't want to freak anybody out.
Right.
But so basically we took the slime, so that picture that you saw with that, I actually had that sent to me. And then we went up to my old college, and so basically you take that slime, you break it up as much as you can, but it was very thick, so it was really hard to even pull apart. And so basically you put it in a centrifuge and you just spin it really, really, really fast for a long time. And that's basically going to separate out any moisture, anything. And then that's where you're going to be left where you have the pellet of cells, and then that top looks like liquid.
Yes.
So then you would remove that liquid, and then there's a lot of different processes. You wash it. So you're just putting a lot of different reagents into the same tube. You're vortexing it, which means you're mixing it up really fast, and then you're going to throw it back in the centrifuge. And you're basically just pulling down and then removing a liquid layer, pulling down, removing a liquid layer, and then eventually you'll come to like a super concentrated DNA, which would then, and as you can tell, that would be put into a machine that would then run that sample and it does amplification. It's PCR is what's called. It's polymerase chain reaction. So this is kind of what you would see, that other picture right there.
Yeah.
That's what you would see kind of during like a washing step where you
Okay.
put some more stuff in there and you shook it and you're pulling it down, and then you would remove that liquid layer and all that kind of white slime looking stuff. That's actually like your DNA that you're slowly pulling.
Okay, so in your centrifuge, we're trying to pull our solids to the exterior so we can remove the liquids. But if we think about like a condensate line that's running relatively horizontal, isn't gravity kind of having the same effect of drawing those heavier, denser particles to the bottom of our condensate line?
Yeah, because most of the time, let's say your machine's shut off for right now because you've hit your desired inside temperature, that water's just going to be sitting. Because I mean, they set it to where it's a little
Yeah.
lean, so everything's going to go up. But there's always like a little divot, so you always got a little water sitting.
Right.
That's a lot of times why, like in your shower,
Yeah.
that little spot will always start growing stuff. So yeah, I mean, you're going to start seeing it at the bottom form first, but then as it starts to thicken, it can build up on itself and go and literally form around that entire thing because it's so strong, because they're all working together here. And
Absolutely.
this diagram is just a more complex, a little bit more detailed version of the previous one that's just showing, your raw specimen. We pulled it down, we centrifuged it, and then you see the washing step going down.
Yep.
And that's just kind of what we're doing to get that. We want the purest DNA that we can. We try to get all the mess out of there so we can get really good results, clean results.
Absolutely. So once we've gotten our solid sample, now we're going to analyze it, right?
Yes, sir. So basically, this is your PCR amplification. So think about it literally like amplifying something.
Yeah.
Those lines, as you go into say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the same specimen, but it's still showing. So I like to describe this as, think of it like when you start with grams, and then you have say micrograms and then nanograms and stuff like that. Like thinking of it in that kind of sense, that's what that is. So, okay, we're seeing it here. Oh, we're still seeing it here. We're still seeing it here. Oh, and then it starts to kind of level off as we get higher and higher in those concentrations, those really minute concentrations. So this is general PCR. So this is how the machine would read it. And then this data will actually go into a database, and it would link it to say, oh, okay, let's just say, for example, E10. All right, that has the same amplification that E. coli does of known samples.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where it's E. coli. So that also runs along. So those are usually called your controls.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that's pretty much how you would find out. And it's like an accuracy base. So it's with 99.1% accuracy, this is E. coli. Because everybody, you definitely got human error when you do these tests. If you miss a washing step, or say you forgot your certain things, if you miss, you're going to have a bad extraction. But, sometimes you'll have a little bit more of a messier sample than, say, somebody else did. So the data can always kind of be skewed, but there's always room in there for those errors.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it links it.
All right. So you did actual DNA analysis of this to confirm that it is not Zuglia?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that those 7 different biofilms that we showed, I actually know the names of all of them. We hid it from the general public.
Sure. So that because if you take the time and the money and the investment to know what it is, then you can understand how to treat it. So as a manufacturer of the treatment, you don't want to just give that out to everyone. So I completely get that. But so that you've had 7 different biofilm growths within this material. And so now it's a matter of, okay, we know exactly what it is. Now we can start talking about ways to manage it, because we're probably not going to be able to actually kill it, are we?
No, as you can see, there's probably some stuff that you would directly put it on there and it would maybe make it break apart. But we also kind of, like in the beginning, what I said, when we think about what these biofilms are actually here for, morally, we really wouldn't want to. So, my thought process on it is we have to maintain the respect that it does deserve, because without these, a lot of plants and stuff wouldn't be here. So that's where we just want to create a non-conducive environment for it to not want to grow and get it out back to where it's supposed to be. Because if we try to kill it, because I have a theory on, things are only going to fight when they're challenged.
Sure.
So if we don't actually try and challenge it and don't try to hurt it, and we just make it an environment where it's like, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. Let me get out of here. That's what we really work towards. But from what I can tell, it wouldn't be very easy to get rid of once it's already established that matrix anyway. But you could definitely prevent it from wanting to become that, if that makes sense.
It does. It's been very interesting to see how it has been treated in different ways. And in some instances, it works. In others, it does not, using the same chemicals. Because you could have a couple technicians from one company in one area have completely different results. Once we understand it from this perspective, we'll go, well, if we are, say, treating it with a chemical and it is killing off some of the bacteria that is not being killed is now becoming immune to the chemicals that we were using before. And so it just continues to grow on its own path. And if we do use those chemicals again, it now has built up its own natural resistance to it.
Yes, absolutely.
All
They're
right.
smarter than we are.
Yeah. And Todd, you're exactly right, man. It's not something to let grow in your system, right?
Yeah, definitely not. You're going to be cleaning up water damage pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and I'm curious too. You're joining in from South Africa. Let us know, Todd, if they're having the same issues in South Africa that we're seeing here, because we've got some theories we're going to be diving into here in just a little bit on where we believe this has changed. Kind of, well, looky there. Let's set it up for that. So let's talk about some theories behind this.
Yeah, so basically, I've been working with a technician in Florida for about 2 years now on this project. And like I said, we have test homes with everything. And we've done them all in the same manufacturers. I'm not going to name names or anything because it's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
And so we came to the conclusion that this started happening in about 2021 after copper got switched and now everything's switched to aluminum. So the reason this is because copper on its own is antimicrobial.
Sure.
So about 99.9% of anything that touches copper isn't going to grow. And I don't want to necessarily say it dies. I mean, some things it will kill, but it's just not going to grow anymore.
Sure.
It's almost like it gets stunned.
Right. It inhibits.
But aluminum doesn't have those properties. So that's kind of where we're seeing, because we're only seeing this in new systems.
That's right.
We're not seeing, and usually what would happen is you would have homes, say 6-8 years ago, that you went to and you had to unclog a drain line, but that was usually about every 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Not very
every
often.
3 to 5 years or so.
Mhm.
See, we're getting brand new systems that are clogging within 2 weeks.
I've heard that. That's why I wanted to address this topic, because it is quite the epidemic in some regions.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are losing contracts over this stuff because
Sure.
they don't know what it is. They don't know what to tell the customer. So there's no reassurance. So then the customer goes and calls another AC, repair person, and then they come in and they don't know either, or they're using stuff that they probably shouldn't be using, which is, of course, what we're going to get into as well. But it's a big issue. And, a lot of people, I guess because it's still a small range if you think about the entire United States,
Yeah.
but it is an important thing to talk about, especially because not only do you want your customers to not have to call you every 2 weeks and you look bad, but it is, as we can see, it was a little dangerous. There's a couple of these that aren't to really be played with.
Yeah.
And so, we got to look at it from both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we have some bacteria that could be potentially growing in there that is, physically harmful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about what we can do.
Yeah, so basically, and I will say that the first thing here is preparing. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit more. So the best way to do this is you're going to have to manage it. There's no way that we can get rid of this stuff. There's no way that we're going to kill it. You don't want to. We went into that already. So what I'm advising people to do is when you get a brand new system in and you're about to do a new install, you need to clean the system first. And that's something that we're actually in the field doing right now. So I have a technician that is doing kind of 3 different things We're going to use a completely solvent-based coil cleaner that you won't have to use water, doesn't rinse or anything like that. Then we're doing one that just has a normal coil cleaner that most people would be using, most techs would use, and rinsing it off. And then we're leaving one completely alone. And we've already kind of done that, but we're going to do this in a phase to try it out. But as you can see, if we kind of remember looking back at some of those different biofilms, some of them were not affected by high pHs or low pHs, which is typically what coil cleaners are based off of, is pH.
Right.
So it may not affect some of these either. So this is a theory that we're working on right now. But I definitely advise people, because it's not going to hurt.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would definitely advise cleaning the system before you put it in. I would try to find something that you can do without having to use water. But if you do have to use water, let's use it to rinse off. Let's try not to have to put it on there first. Because more than likely, these bacteria are actually on the coils when you get them in a box brand new. And then other thoughts that we had too was, when you're designing the system in the very beginning of a new home or a new business, think about your return. Maybe put it up on the wall instead of doing a floor return, so you're not pulling in so much dirt from the ground. And also, it's expensive, but it is a thought. If you ran your drain line copper, which a lot of people in different countries do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That will definitely help. But then we also have to think about the aspect of this stuff is starting at the coils and in the drain pan. So we do have to kind of think about that too. It can grow in the drain pan as well. So that may not help you, but it's definitely a thought. But if you're trying to go cost efficient, that may not be the best option.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed personally in the field in the last 5 years or so, our coils, especially our condenser coils, but now our outdoor coils, but our indoor coils also, tend to not be as cleaned, I believe, as what they were in the past. And you still have some discussions about that to have. But I've noticed that a lot of our coils have more of a oil residual film on them than they have in the past. And I'm sure that has to do with industrial and commercial manufacturing and, waste and water, usage. And so I'm curious if that has changed in the manufacturing of coils over time. That'd be another issue for us to talk about. But, as technicians, we have noticed that many of our coils do have more of a film to the actual fins than we have had in the past. And of course, they do coat most of our coils are manufactured flat, especially for the outdoor unit. They're manufactured straight, and then they have a fine mist of oil on them. Then they're put into a jig to be able to form the outdoor coils. Many of our, A coils and N coils and M coils are flat slabs, so may not go through the same processes. But that has been a topic of concern in many of our technicians, including myself, is doing proper cleaning on installations just to make sure.
Yeah, because we don't know. Manufacturers really do keep things very hush hush.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely tried to reach out and said, hey, I'll sign an NDA. This is just for me to know so I can help people. But I understand it at the same time. You don't want to give out your information, but that's a thought. Is it going through a cleaning process before it comes and gets in that box and ships to you, or is it not? And then, like you're saying, if there's extra lubrication, which makes sense in the manufacturing why they would use it, but that's a medium, kind of like water. Now it's a little bit more slicky, but it's still a sticky medium.
Right.
So that can make it easier. And then, like I said, you got these huge manufacturing facilities with so many people in there. You don't know what's getting on those. And if they're not going through a cleaning, then that's definitely something to think about if we can get that information from them to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are recommending preparing our installation, doing a proper clean. Yeah. And then as we go forward, let's talk about the whole treating side of things.
So basically, once you kind of prepare, and I like I said, my theory is if you clean the system beforehand and it does actually work, you're not going to see this growth as quickly as you would typically see it. So then we have to come up with a treatment plan. So I suggest finding a treatment that works for you, that you've tested out, which we're going to go through some different options that are out there, and just remembering the concept, because if you can conceptualize things and understand them, then you can always win. And so just remember that we're really wanting to create a non-conducive living environment. And the big part about that is having something that's there and that's continuously there, because this stuff is running. And if you think about a concept of a home in Florida, on average, and this is just average, you could see about 50 gallons of water go through that in one day.
In a 24-hour.
Yeah. So think about if you wanted to not have to go back to a house for 6 months, you have to really think about that concept. What are you putting there, and is it going to last?
Okay. And the education, which is why we're here today, to help understand. Yay! We're doing the chemistry side so we understand we're not here to kill, we're here to control.
Yes.
And that's a different perspective than what we've been thinking about in the past. We've been in the, hey, we got to kill this stuff, and let's find the strongest things we can to kill it, and let's start doing that. So let's just talk about some of the different options, and I'm sure there's going to be opportunity for controversy on a lot of these. I'll probably have some emails from manufacturers, but we just want to be realistic and talk about ways that we are treating this particular growth of biofilms that we're talking about. So this may not be universal for all growths in a drain line, but for the biofilms that we're encountering, let's talk about this particular and ways to treat it.
Yeah, and just kind of like you'd said before, I know I work for a company that does certain things. I'm not bashing any. I try to keep names out of it as much as I can. This is just facts.
Mm-hmm.
And I did give everybody their due diligence on it. I'm trying to look at it from the most neutral way possible and based off of the science that we went over. So, for instance, UV is one that a lot of people use. And kind of another thing I wanted to mention, this is very specific to this biofilm. So in other places, like if you're using UV and you're like, it works, then that's awesome.
Yeah, it's treating that particular scenario that it was designed to treat.
Absolutely. And that's why I said treat. I'm not saying treat with what I made. I'm just saying find something that works for you that's safe, and let's, go that way. So the UV, it does have pros. It can slow the growth of some bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the thing. We have 7, and I believe 4 out of the 7 were UV resistant. So that means that you're probably knocking 4 of them down, but you still got 3 that are coming up.
Yeah.
And then from what I've read, I've never installed one of these, but they said that they're fairly easy to install.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some pros on it. So the cons with it is expensive. I mean, just that one system in particular, runs $240, and then you have to change the bulbs every year most of the time, and those range anywhere from $50 to $100 a pair.
Plus installation.
I'm sorry?
Plus installation.
Yeah, plus installation, yes. And then, as we said, 4 of these biofilms it's not going to work on. Another thing with the UV is it's only going to affect that area where it's installed. So most of the time they put it right there on the A coil.
Yeah.
So it'll work there, but you got to think this stuff is moving. So it's going down. This isn't in your drain line. This isn't in your drain pan. So we have to think about that concept too. And then also my big thing with UV is it is dangerous. And, think about when you have something sitting outside and it gets in the sun for a long time, how it degrades over time.
Plastics.
Let's kind of remember that concept too of, it is dangerous for metals and stuff like that over a long period of time. So that's just a thought.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where we're at with UV. With this one's a relatively new product. I love the concept of it. I love the continuous treatment that it offers. I thought another really cool thing was that if a technician actually installs it, it will automatically contact that company when that float switch is triggered. So the moment that trigger goes off and the system will not work anymore, it will actually automatically contact the service technician provider, and they can come out and, clear your line and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
They do offer different fills. They have a 3-month and a 6-month. One's a little bit more concentrated than the other. So the big cons on this is when you have anything that's enzyme based. So enzymes are actually biological. They're a living thing.
Sure.
They only last about a year. So if so that gives you a shelf life of a year. And it has to be under very optimal conditions. So they will, and as we can see if we go down, they have pretty strict temperature restrictions. So they'll start to denature at about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So in South Florida and everything, it gets about 110, 120.
Addicts a
So
lot
if
more.
you have that in your truck,
Yeah.
everything in there is no longer doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Oh, sure.
In a sense, it dies. They don't actually die, but that's the concept. And then also, if you live anywhere where it gets below freezing a lot, they just stopped working once again. But also, as we saw, a lot of our bacteria was antibiotic resistant, so these enzymes actually really aren't going to work on a lot of these. Another concept is it solely goes into the drain line, so we're only treating that one area. I did notice that people can buy this online, just a regular homeowner can buy this online, so I know that kind of makes technicians a little weary sometimes, because if they set it up and they call, what if they don't know a lot about this and they get called to a home, not a lot of information yet, and it is kind of relatively expensive. That system right there is $130, and then you got about 45, anywhere from $30 to $45 for refills for that particular product.
Sure.
This one, I honestly, I don't really like this one. I feel like it's a concept that somebody just was trying to make some money. The pro on it does have the continuous treatment, so it has a hose that goes into the drain line and it's attached to a pump. So the cons on this, it is vinegar based. So basically this concept is you go buy a jug of vinegar, you go set it in your air handler area, you pull the hose in it and you attach it to that. That's the concept. So a lot of people don't realize, but vinegar is actually really acidic. It has a pH of 2.
Right.
So if this gets on any of your metal and stuff like that, it can hurt it. So that's another thing. And this is very reliant on a homeowner too. This is being sold directly to people just like technicians. So if you got somebody dealing with vinegar, a regular homeowner trying to put this and they happen to get it on the coils or something, it could hurt. Same thing, it only treats the drain line, so we're only treating one area, and it is kind of relatively expensive. So that's $100, and then if this is a continuous pump of vinegar, and that you're probably buying one of those a week, so it can get expensive.
Wow, yeah, absolutely, I can see that.
And this is kind of another one where I believe they just kind of tried to create something to make some money. This one also is a continuous treatment into the drain line. The cons for this one, I actually, if you scan it, it's real hard to read, but I know what's in it. It says it on the back, but it's basically detergent and surfactant based. So it's almost like, think of it like soap,
right,
in a concept. So that's not going to work on these at all. Soap and water is pretty much what this one is. But from a different perspective, it is only treating the drain line. This is sold direct to customers just the same. And that little setup right there is $135. They also claim that one bottle will last 2 years, and there's no way it would have. I couldn't even see doing a drop that would last that long. So yeah, this one I definitely just looking at. I wouldn't recommend this one. It's worse than the other one. So this one out here, I really do like this one. It has a continuous treatment, and they do guarantee it up to 6 months. I will say that this is actually patented, so I know what's in it, but I'm not going to say it to the general public. You're free to go look at the patent and see what chemicals are in it, but I won't actually unveil that because I'll respect the patent. But the cons are it does have some dangerous chemicals in it, but I will say that I do like the fact that they make it to where you never touch that bag. So when you go to change it out, you'll unscrew it and you'll put another one in. You never come in contact with the chemical, so I do like that aspect. The other thing with this is you do put it into the drain line, so you're only dealing with the drain line once again. And thinking about it from just a reasonable perspective, you do have a potential for a leak. So when you put this in and attach it in through your PVC line, if you don't do it properly, there's a little kink or a move or something, you actually do run into a possible problem of your line leaking. So this one is my next best favorite. So this one, like I said, I won't say names or anything. Most people, if they use it, they know who this is. So they did a really good job on this one. It has a hydrophobic gel layer on it, so when you spray it, it creates a layer and everything kind of beads off of it. and it does stay easy application. So it has a spray, so it allows you to treat multiple different surfaces. So that's great. It is silicone based, so it's slow dissolving. Still kind of back and forth on if that's good, depending on what kind of silicone it is, because if it is a polymer, so it doesn't really technically break down. It does contain all safe chemicals. They've always been really big on that, so I definitely like that part, and it's very cost effective. You can buy that in, probably $20-$30 a technician's price, and they can use that multiple times.
Nice.
So the only one thing I will say about this product is it is enzyme based. So as we talked about it before, when you use the enzymes, you have the problem of, okay, I can't store this in my truck if it's really hot. Everything in it's not going to work. So it really limits your investment, and then it also limits your storage. And then also, because it's enzyme based, it's not going to work on a lot of these biofilms.
Resistant
And
biofilm.
then and then a pro or con, kind of depending on who you are, but they recommend retreating every 3 months. So if you want to go back to a house every 3 months, awesome. But if you don't, then so this is what we've actually developed here at Highside based off of all the research and stuff that we've done. So our product's called Biofilm Remover. Tells you exactly what it does. So the pros on this one is there aren't any biological additives in it. So there's nothing that's living in there. So you don't have any storage restrictions, and it has an indefinite shelf life. So that thing can sit in your truck, and it can be 150 degrees in there, and nothing's going to mess with it. So we didn't go with the layer part of it because a lot of people in HVAC don't like layers. If you create some type of coating or a layer, people believe it messes with heat transfer. So we wanted to kind of try and make everybody happy. So instead, we created a very thick gel to where it'll last over those kind of washes of the water coming through. It's made with all safe chemicals. It has an easy spray application, so it allows you to treat multiple surfaces, so the coils, the drain pan, and the drain line. So we field tested it up to 8 months. After 8 months is when we started seeing regrowth. So we didn't actually have a clog in 8 months, but we did have regrowth. So we did see the stuff start to come back. And that was just because the product had finally washed away.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
then, of course, it's very cost effective. You're looking from a range of anywhere from $20 to $30 a bottle, and it'll last you a long time. So the real big con with this one is thinking about your customer, getting to know them a little bit. Hey, how long do you run your AC? What do you typically keep it on? And thinking about the concept of, let's say 50 gallons go through there a day. You need to make sure that you apply a good thick layer so it doesn't wash away faster than when you want to go back to that house, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does.
But that's what we've worked on, and it's been doing really, really well in the field. It is available now to purchase and everything through us. And we're still working on other parts to kind of create a series to really help you from beginning to end of this. We want to make it to where potentially you would only have to do annuals and go in, or even longer. But I believe that the testing in the field with the cleaning aspect of it that we're really going to go, I think that's going to be a big help in us figuring out, okay, how can we maintain this stuff even better? So,
right. So creating a long-term solution. And it all comes down to the science of understanding what it is, right?
Absolutely.
I'm sure every one of these chemicals has the opportunity to treat a certain type of bacteria in a certain scenario. But what we're encountering, particularly in these humid areas, these biofilms, they're very unique and they're very specific on how they need to be treated. And so let's make sure we cover the things that are not recommended for the treating of biofilms in particularly.
Yeah. So my big thing, if you take anything from this, is remember these aren't to be played with. Don't touch them. But my next big thing is do not use bleach. Bleach. I do like to say that bleach has a purpose in this world to an extent. It is not an HVAC. There's not one HVAC technician in the world that needs to have bleach in their truck. It is extremely dangerous vapor. So you have to think of this from a long-term perspective. Let's say that you're a career technician, and let's say I'm going to do this for 30 years. If you breathe in bleach every day for probably even 10 to 15 years, something's going to go wrong. We can get into DNA methylation and all that kind of stuff and mutated genes and creating tumors all day. But if you breathe something in that you shouldn't be breathing in, eventually there's going to be a bad copy coming in.
Right.
And I would say cancer, COPD, bronchitis, any types of things that would go with your airways, you will have a problem. But I'll say from a health perspective, but let's just say from a just straight up chemistry perspective,
Yeah.
bleach will actually I always like to say bleach likes to make things look pretty. So it only does the cap. So as you can see on that bottom left, the structure of a cap. So you have the cap, the stem, and the root of a mold spore. So bleach will only make the top of that white. Everything else, it's almost like plucking the top of a flower and then it growing back. It's the same concept.
Okay.
So bleach actually doesn't kill mold or anything as it says it does. You just pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to say it does, and the EPA lets you get away with it, kind of thing. But it actually doesn't do that. So it's not actually going to work. It just looks like it works. Another big thing with bleach is it's an extremely strong oxidizer. So if you got a drop on that system at all, it's going to corrode it and create problems. There was actually a group of techs that were pouring this all over the AC systems in Florida, and they had a huge class action suit because it literally corroded all the systems in these people's homes.
Wow.
So that's another big thing to think about. Bleach doesn't need to be anywhere around metal. And then if we think about it just from a preventative perspective, if you pour bleach in the drain pan and the drain line, it goes away. So you poured it in there and it just washed away. So it's not preventative at all.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
But it's really dangerous.
So remove the bleach, period.
Yeah, no bleach.
Okay.
No bleach. So, and this is a product that we also manufacture. This is more of, I just wanted to say, if you were in a situation where, say, someone's home was molded, let's just say it was molded inside the air handler unit for some reason, and you would want to use bleach, I would recommend using this. It's called Sporgo. So this one is actually all natural ingredients. So it will not hurt you. You can get it on you. You can breathe it in. It's not going to hurt you at all. And this one actually affects the cap, stem, and the root. The only difference between the Sporgo and the bleach is kind of funny. So Sporgo may not always look like it did the job, but it did. Whereas bleach looks like it did the job, but actually didn't. So this would be more for like your drywall or like plywood, something like that. I'm not recommending you put this on a system, in the drain line, nothing like that. This is more of, okay, well, hey, I got a house that's got mold in it. That's when I would use bleach. I still wouldn't use bleach, and I would use this.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there's other products that are probably out there that are safe that will do the same thing. This is just one that I know because we make it.
Yeah. So PK, I don't know if you just joined us. This is really what the whole conversation has been about. I'm glad you did join us though and are asking about these. Will it break up the buildup in the drain? Well, if we have a biofilm buildup within the drain, that's what we're talking about. No, if you use a bleach and it happens to be able to clean things out, all we're really doing is contaminating the area with bleach and maybe removing some of the bacteria. But now we're actually making that growth stronger and more resistant to the chemicals down the road. So it is a good question. I mean, that's really why we're discussing this, because of the misperceptions that even I myself had going into this. Because I initially thought, I got a bunch of growth in this drain. I'm going to use bleach and clean it out and off we go, not realizing exactly what I was doing with that.
Yeah. And just to kind of piggyback on the will this break down buildup in the drain. So we recommend that if you go to a home and there's a clog, you need to go ahead and suck that out with a vacuum or blow it out with a gallo gun, kind of however you do things. And so the product that we created, so the biofilm remover, it's preventative. Yep. So this wouldn't be necessarily where, oh, hey, I have a clog, so let me just spray all this stuff in there and let it break down. When it's already matured to that matrix where it's that thick, it's really hard to break up on its own. So you would want to go ahead and get rid of the problem. And then our biofilm remover will be there, kind of like a clean new surface that will prevent the buildup from then on. And just to make sure, because he came in the Sporgo, this is a bleach replacement for if you had mold or something in drywall or on somebody's wall or plywood or anything like that. Sporgo is not recommended for preventative of the slime buildup. That's what biofilm remover is for, just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Good clarification.
And this is just kind of letting everybody know that, the biofilm remover product that we did come out with, we're not done. We hit the 8-month mark and we're like, all right, let's go ahead and get this out. Let's help techs now. They need it now. Because we know that it at least works and it's going to help them, kind of, let's alleviate this a little bit. But we are continuing to work on a drain pan series. We're trying to, get it to at least that 1 year mark to where you would go anyway to do a preventative maintenance or coil cleaning or something. We don't want it to be where you're just getting all these calls and it's like, dude, my stuff is still clogged. You came 2 weeks ago. That's what we're trying to alleviate right now. But we are working, me and the technician in Florida, we're working. We got a whole bunch of different troubleshooting. We got 3 different things working to try and kind of create a series to guard you from here all the way to the end to where you're going, because it's just your normal time to go and not, oh, hey, I need you to come now. This is an emergency kind of thing. I will also say that I am trying to talk to manufacturers about this issue and to try and see if there's a way that we can actually help y'all from the very beginning. Because like I mentioned before, I definitely feel like this is something that is starting at the very beginning and it's only getting worse throughout. So we are definitely trying to do that. It is really hard though, because manufacturers do have their way of things and they don't like people knowing, and it's understandable, but we are trying to do that as well, to kind of at least let them know this is what this is what you need to do to prevent it before it gets to the customer and they install it. But for anybody that's just coming in, we are recommending to try and clean a brand new system, especially if it's made of aluminum, before you set it up. We do believe that this will help slow that growth from the very beginning and then preventing it throughout with a biofilm remover, anything that's been working for you, to kind of, let's keep this at bay and keep learning and working to figure it out.
Yeah, it's all about the science, understanding what we're actually working with. If we think about it in the field, as technicians, we learn how to repair things by completely understanding the sequence of operation of how it functions. Right? If I walked up to a piece of machinery and I knew nothing about how it actually operates, I would be limited on my ability to diagnose it and to properly treat it. So we're really looking at it from the molecular perspective of the biofilms that we are now seeing, particularly in our southeast, in our humid areas of the country, that are new within the last few years, particularly since we have changed from copper aluminum coils to all aluminum coils. And it is a very difficult thing that is causing a lot of grief with many technicians and contractors. And so we're here for a solution. That's all we're really here to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I always say. I'm a problem solver. That's my job. Not really trying to tell you anything. I'm just trying to teach you.
and absolutely, that's why when we're talking about this, I was like, well, we got to talk about your product because they're paying for you to be here to be on our show. And when we bring it all into one big educational package and go, hey, there are a lot of things out there. Let's understand what each of them does, because they all have their purpose for particular things. But this particular one that we're talking about, these intrusive biofilms, they're very unique and need very special treatment. And doing a true DNA analysis of what they are to be able to say this is indeed who you are gives us the opportunity to understand how we can work with them, control them, not kill them.
Yes, absolutely. That's the big thing, is if you don't try to do it if it's already there. Let's just get it out, get it back into the environment, and then let's start from scratch and let's prevent it. Let's just make it not want to be there. And I think about it like if you're someone that doesn't like going out a lot and you're in a noisy environment. So if they don't like noisy environments, then that's what we're creating. So we're creating something to where they just don't want to grow. They don't want to be there at all. They just want to be back out. And so that's kind of what we're doing. Because if we do that, I believe that we can slow their evolution down as well, because we're not creating a challenge anymore. We're actually helping them get where they need to be, because the AC system is not where they need to be. They need to be outside with the grass and the roots and the plants and the trees and doing what they were meant to do.
That is an interesting perspective.
Yeah. Well, I like I care about the planet a little bit.
I believe that. I see that. Wow.
Yeah.
And so we really appreciate all of the in-depth, as Howard mentioned, all the CSI style investigation to understand exactly what it is.
Yeah, well, that's where I got my start, was forensics. So, yeah.
Absolutely. John, that's not one that we covered with the bipolar ionization. Kind of what we were talking about is if it is treating the scenarios that it was introduced to treat, excellent. I've got one myself. And it has definitely made some differences, particularly for the suspended particles in my air. That has made a very significant difference. Now, when we're talking about these biofilms, we're really saying that there's really only going to be a way to treat them properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any other questions? Yeah, please bring them in. We want to discuss this. Yeah, Todd, thank you for joining us from South Africa, out traveling, and man, that sounds like a pretty good gig, getting out and checking out the world, learning about HVAC and teaching about HVAC. So definitely do a little investigating scenarios while you're out there. Be a CSI for us, Todd, and see if they're encountering some of the same scenarios, particularly in these all aluminum indoor coils.
Yeah. And just to kind of let anybody know that watches this, I have been doing most of my stuff in Louisiana and Florida. But if there's anybody kind of even overseas, we are a global company, so we do deal with international customers. I'd love to collaborate with anybody. If anybody has questions, y'all can, reach me. If you go onto our website and go to contact us, I get any of that stuff too. You can also email me directly. But if you go to our contact us from the link down there, I will get that. So if it's anything specific to biofilm, you will get in contact with me, and then we can go from there. I'd love to work with anybody that has some different systems, different things. Troubleshooting is the biggest thing right now that we're doing too. So, if you're in South Africa and you're getting slime, send me some. I'll dig into that one too, and we can actually compare and see, okay, hey, they're in a tropical area over here. Let's see if we're getting the same here that we are in the U.S. So, yeah, I'm definitely open to, this is going to be a project that's probably going to go for a little bit longer for sure. Yeah. So I'm always down to work with anybody. And if anybody has questions, we're always really, our big thing is quality and customer service. You call us, we're going to answer. Sometimes I might even answer the phone if I'm not in the lab. So, you can always talk to us, and we'll always, talk to you and, see what's going on. So, yeah, awesome. I'm here if anybody ever wants to do anything with this, or you're having this issue somewhere else that we didn't mention. So just kind of throwing that out there.
I love it. So let's connect with Fallon Dyle at Highside Chemicals at highsidechem.com. We appreciate you being on the show, bringing the deep science, bringing the chemistry into the classroom. I'll give a lot of people the extra little ammunition that they need when the technician comes up to them and says, I'm just going to treat this with bleach. Now we can, as an educator, go, no, you're not. And I am going to tell you why. And I'm going to show you with science and chemistry.
Yeah, and it also helps the technicians reassure their customers that they actually know what's going on too. Yeah. So,
what is this? I don't know. It's not in my repertoire.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for having me. This has been great. As many people as I can get this information out to, I'd like to, just for safety reasons, for sure.
Indeed. And we'll be posting this. This will be all on our channels. It'll be on the HVACR Learning Network. All of these are there. If you're needing CEUs, you can come back, watch the video, take an assessment, and actually get a printed out CEU for that. So definitely go over and take a look at the HVACR Learning Network at hvacr.elearn.network. This one will be up within the next week or so. And thank you so much, Fallon, for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been great.
It's been a lot of fun. We'll see you all next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC Show. We're doing a live road show from A.O. Smith to go down and look at their newest generation of heat pump water heaters. Ooh. That's going to be fun. All right. Yeah. Bye, y'all.